12 minutes on the dock. Within this dock, feeling sincerely, genuinely the energy of that mechanisms that have the sameness quality to it. That which does not change. That which does not change from a pure energy level. And how on different shades of the in-between level, it's translated how everything in the material world is the same function as the spiritual world, in the case that all these other beings within whatever forms they have, they're going through spaces, in different spaces, and they're going through different environments with different, and using different material objects within different ranges, within different relationships. So to connect yesterday's video, I'm talking about context demons, in between the context demon and the real context saints, which is holding the top-down exalted position of the emotions, is the duality in the spiritual psychological war we find ourselves in, us being in between our own energy context demon and our energy context saint. Because the saint originally it was the term that upheld a certain energy, but within the transitions over the times and how like the overall landscape got like, you know, less light and more particular like darkness and unknownness, then new things arose from how we have a certain level of safety and a certain level of like, you know, atrocity respectively and like on the planet Earth. Because you could kind of point to like, you know, quote unquote that God exists because there's a different stand presence, there's a different command presence of a different observer, a different good watcher that it's not necessarily intervening, but as there's a spiritual observation and a stand presence, that's kind of giving us some sort of leeway for like, you know, the experiment of the 50-50, you know, pleasure and pain within the reality. We're leaning towards the quote unquote pleasure because there's a different, you know, there's a different constructive force of spirituality out there that's in our favor to like keep the experiment and the mechanics running on a secret balance level. Because no matter what happens, this is just the surface level narrative experiment of what should happen based on what we need to experiment or experience based on what we already done from our own micro cause and effect to other people's macro cause and effect. Because we can't really like hate anybody. We have to hate like, you know, the mechanics of how things are working and in a subtle unison and a subtle harmony. Because all of these like Greek gods, all these pagan gods, all these dark pagan gods, like it's all the same shit. It's just like, where are we at in time? You know, because there's a difference between light pagans and dark pagans. You know, it's like it's already happening. You know, but like there's different field positions of how we interact with reality. Because obviously, like you know, paganism is just like different. You know, different magical crafts and what you're doing with, you know, the spirits of the animals and the nature spirits and the animal spirits. So that's pretty much like just a very like nutshell kind of explanation of what that could mean. But like that doesn't mean that can't get distorted. It's actually normal that it's kind of like distorted. Like the cows have been like within their own experiments for quite a while now, you know. So it's like all these quote unquote like, you know, background energies of like the Egyptian pantheon, the Greek pantheon, they could more or less be the same, you know, like the same being, but they changed their titles, you know. It's the same family more or less with different tweaks here throughout time, but like in a different context. Like they could all be like their own like head organization of all these other organizations, because, you know, the godheads of the Greek pantheon, they're still doing what we're doing, just in a more lighter way, in a more different way. They're still like, because I look at like all this, like I look at it as just a higher octave of like clerical work. Like when people talk about like any underground religion, it's just they're still doing some type of clerical work, and maybe they're like even like they're the maintainers of the original code, you know. Because if they're at a different space observing what everybody's doing here, then that means they have more of a bandwidth of what they could actually, you know, what they're envisioning is more broader and so their give and take is more broader. So this is just a brief video that like maybe God does exist, you know. And so the reason I bring that up is because that's how I'm like, because like how could we look at spirituality in a modern time? Well, we have to like realize like what how spirituality is like the same as mundane reality. Mundane reality is just more, it's more condensed and compressed as far as the time was slowed down, but it's the same thing just in a different like arrangement, but it's still more or less the same mechanics. And so like these beings, they have to have like, you know, their own offices. I look at spirituality as like just office work. I look at all this cult shit as just office work, you know, because they're doing it from a different vantage point and they're just arranging it, and it's different to us. It's weird to us because we don't realize how things were always working. But the point of this video is just kind of realizing like the sameness and the changeless things of how things got like, you know, materially diluted, not for good, not for bad, but and how those new objects and substances and materials, they're being used uniquely within a time of now where there's a different transition of more light and more dark, exiting and entering, artificially and non-artificially, and how like that whole thing is like, it's kind of like, there's like kind of like it's kind of like a washover, you know. You can look at it like as like an esoteric like what do you call that, you know, laundry room, but like not literally though, but but that was just a brief chime in of just seeing like, you know, like us discovering like new code languages, you know, new code languages. And how the new code languages that we do discover, it's only new to us because we're in a certain bandwidth of our reality that is like that is lesser of a periphery and an envisionment than something else could be, you know. So within like the new code language that we do discover, like we have to like see how it's being used, you know. Like they might like, maybe we might already be one big commercial, or maybe like, you know, on a different field they could put like commercials in the sky, you know. So it's like, so this is just a brief video, you know.